Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. I am so excited to be here with you all. Specifically, I'm really excited to be here with Andie, Ivy's in-house QuickBooks expert. You may or may not know Andie, but she is a QuickBooks and Ivy queen, and we are so lucky to have her. Um, Andie joined our team almost a year ago and has really just been an amazing resource for our designers to optimize their Ivy integration with QuickBooks. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, we've done, Ivy to QuickBooks integration webinars before, and we really wanted to take an opportunity to help you all optimize this integration and go over some frequently asked questions that Andie receives on a regular basis, specifically pertaining to payments and how unapplied payments work and just best practices and identifying sync errors and whatnot. So before I actually get started, I forgot to ask, can you guys see me and hear me okay? If somebody could just write in the questions. Okay, great. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass this off to Andie. If you guys have any questions that come in over the course, please feel free, just as you submitted questions just now to let me know you can hear me, please submit the questions there because I will be answering questions that I can just by chatting, and then anything that might be pertinent to a wider audience, I'm going to ask Andie over the course of the webinar. So please feel free to ask away. This will be recorded. If you have to leave at any time, you'll receive a recording of this after it airs. So without further ado, thanks so much for joining us on Friday. I'm going to go ahead and just pass the baton to Andie. So just one moment while I do that, and we'll get started.
Thank you, Siobhan. Hi, everyone. This is Andie here, Ivy's QBO integration expert. So basically, my role here at Ivy is I'm working with our designers who have their Ivy accounts integrated with QuickBooks Online. I assist with the integration, I assist with mapping, just basically getting you set up so the integration is seamless and we have everything flowing to your QuickBooks account as it should. I'm here for questions about the integration, about best practices and things like that. Today, speaking of best practices, we're going to cover some best practices that pertain to the integration with QuickBooks, answer some frequently asked questions, go over how to manage unapplied payments that show up in QuickBooks, bill payments to vendors, purchase orders, and things like that, how that feeds over from Ivy to QuickBooks. And then we are also going to cover some common errors, common syncing errors that I see. And hopefully that will help everybody just make the integration a little easier for you, help you recognize, maybe some things you're doing that you could be doing differently that's just going to make the integration more streamlined. I know we may have some seasoned QuickBooks pros here, but whether you're a longtime QuickBooks user or brand new to QuickBooks, new to the integration, we have some specific tips to help make sure your integration is set up properly and set you up for success. So let's get started. The first thing I wanted to do is go into QuickBooks. Sorry about that.
Oh my gosh, she's so cute.
Let's go into QuickBooks, and I'm going to just go over some settings that I'd like for everybody to make sure you have some things turned on, some specific settings turned off in QuickBooks. And the first thing we're going to look at is over here. If you go to the gear in the upper right hand corner, you're going to go to account and settings. And over here, you have, all of your company settings and things like that. So the first thing you'd want to check is under expenses. And if you are using purchase orders, you would be on QuickBooks Plus. QuickBooks Online Plus is the only version that supports purchase orders. So if you are in fact using purchase orders and wanting those to sync over to QuickBooks from Ivy, you want to make sure purchase orders are turned on. So that's the first one. The next setting we want to look at is over here in Advanced. In Advanced, there is a section called Automation. And to make the integration as seamless as possible, you want to make sure that all of these automation settings are turned to off. That way, QuickBooks is not auto-applying payments where it shouldn't, auto-generating invoice numbers, anything like that. So all of these could be turned off. And then coming out of settings, you'll want to make sure that sales tax is turned on, and that's done over here from your dashboard on the left-hand side under taxes. So, and this is typically going to be for brand new QuickBooks users. You just started your QuickBooks Online account. You'll want to make sure taxes are turned on, and that's for sales tax on the customer side. Lastly, we are going to head over to what is called the chart of accounts. And this is kind of where you have your income, your expense accounts, all of that. You'll want to make sure that you have your bank account set up. As you can see here, I have my Chase checking account. And then you'll want to make sure also, if you're using a company credit card, that you have your credit card set up. This is different from a debit card. Debit card links to your bank account, so this would be an actual credit card. And then finally, again, this is probably going to be more for brand new QuickBooks users. You'll want to make sure you have accounts payable set up. And that is where in Ivy, you will map your payable account to. And this again is for users who are using purchase orders, generating those vendor bills and bill payments from Ivy into QuickBooks. So now that we have looked at those settings, we're going to go back to Ivy. And everything we're going to do from here on out will be in Ivy. Why? Everything pertaining to the integration needs to happen in Ivy in order for the sync to be successful. The biggest point of the integration for everyone to know is that the sync is only one way, from Ivy to QuickBooks. QuickBooks doesn't push back to Ivy, so that's very important to know. What does that mean? You want to generate your invoices, record your payments. You want to do that in Ivy. You want to do everything for your projects in Ivy. That will sync to QuickBooks. If you need to make an edit, you do it in Ivy. If you need to remove a line item, adjust a payment, anything like that would be done from Ivy. Ivy will update QuickBooks for you. You don't want to enter payments in QuickBooks because Ivy won't know. You don't want to delete things, edit, alter things, make anything inactive in QuickBooks, because then we get that dreaded red QB button and the sync is broken. Then that's when you call me and I come in and fix it, typically. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go into is payments. And I want to cover everything related to Ivy and QBO payments in this session. This is a little bit of a more advanced session, and I get a lot of questions that revolve around payments. Why do they look a certain way in QuickBooks? So we're going to talk about unapplied payments and what they are and how they work in QuickBooks. Unapplied payments are payments taken as a liability. It essentially means that you're holding on to your client's money until it is applied as a payment on an invoice. This can come in the form of a retainer payment. This can come in the form of a deposit payment, proposal deposit payment. So we have these two forms of unapplied payments. Like I was saying, you have your proposal deposit payment and you have your retainer payment. Both of these are wonderful ways to help collect money up front and protect yourself financially. Let's understand how these payments look in QuickBooks. So let's go into one of our projects here. We're going to go over here to Karen's Colorado cabin. So let's go in here and we're just going to look at a proposal. Okay. So as you can see down here, I have a proposal. I have not invoiced this yet. And coming down here, I have a payment that I've received. I'm just going to click See Details so you can see what that looks like. Karen paid with her credit card for this proposal. Now, what does that look like in QuickBooks? Let's go over to QuickBooks. Now, Ivy is accrual basis, so I'm going to be showing you the report on accrual basis. Let's come over here to the balance sheet. You're going to see that I have negative accounts receivable. So what does that mean? That means that that payment has synced over from Ivy. Because I am running my books on accrual basis, you can see up here, this is accrual method. That payment is going to sit as negative accounts receivable until I generate the invoice, which I will do in just a minute, until I generate the invoice and apply the payment. Or in the case of a proposal, when you generate the invoice from the proposal, Ivy will auto apply the payment to the invoice in both Ivy and QuickBooks. I just quickly wanted to show you in her customer profile what that looks like. Here is that unapplied payment. Karen has a negative balance on her account. Here it is unapplied. Now we're going to go over to Ivy. We're going to generate that invoice. Oops. There we go. And then I'm going to show you exactly what we have in QuickBooks. So let's save this invoice. There's that dreaded QB button. We're just going to retry that sync really quickly. And let's see what everything looks like over in QuickBooks. We're going to refresh this customer profile. And here we go. We have the invoice. Karen no longer has a negative balance. Proposal or estimate in QuickBooks, invoice, payment applied. Let's go look back at our balance sheet. We no longer have a negative AR balance. So that is exactly how that works. If you are running your books on cash basis, you would see that payment not as negative accounts receivable, you would see it as unapplied cash payment income. Again, this is if you're running your books on cash basis or if you run your balance sheet on cash basis. And exactly the same way as it worked with accrual basis, once the invoice is generated, payment is applied. You're going to see that money plucked out of unapplied cash payment income and be allocated as it should be. So retainers, those will work the exact same way. Once you go into Ivy, you've received your retainer payment. It's unapplied in QuickBooks, sitting as negative AR in QuickBooks. Once you generate your invoice in Ivy and you physically apply that retainer to the invoice, it will be allocated the exact same way in QuickBooks for you. So let's go into
Raylyn is asking, hi everybody. Raylyn is asking, what's the difference between cash and accrual? So
Great.
Andie, would love just a quick overview. Of course, this is really focused on Ivy's integration with QuickBooks Online. But of course, it's important to understand the differences between accrual and cash.
So I love talking accounting. I know that's crazy, but I do. So great question. I'm happy to answer that. The difference between cash and accrual. Accrual method accounting is basically you are reporting your income based off of invoices generated. It has nothing to do with whether or not you've been paid. If you've invoiced $500,000 for the year, when you report on your income tax return, you're going to report $500,000 worth of income because it's basing it off of invoices you've generated to customers. Same thing goes for your cost of goods sold, is going to be counted off of vendor bills. Those are those vendor invoices that are generated from the purchase order in Ivy. It's basically transactionally based. Cash basis, you are counting your income not off whether or not your invoice has been paid, but off of actual income. So that's why on cash basis, the unapplied payment, the payment that's been received with no invoice, it's being counted as income, but it's being thrown into unapplied cash payment income. The same thing on the vendor side for cash basis, it's money out. So you could pay a vendor $1,000, even if you have no vendor invoice or vendor bill, as I call them, it's based on money out. So cash basis is actual monetary transactions. Accrual basis is based off of invoices and vendor bills. And I'd highly, highly recommend if you have a bookkeeper you're working with, a CPA who handles your taxes, you can defer to them. I'm a big fan of, you don't have to, get ready for your CPA license, but definitely just a base level understanding of how the financial reporting works for your business, I always think is great. And then you're basically understanding when you have those yearly conversations with your CPA or those monthly conversations with your bookkeeper, you're more in a place to understand what they're talking about and what's going on.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Raylan, for your question. If you're interested, not in Ivy, specifically to QuickBooks Online, just Ivy accounting, we do have a couple best practices that we recommend for our accrual-based reporting system, which is taking money on proposals, collecting money on retainers to allocate at a later time, and using progressive invoicing, basically to generate the invoice whenever you are ready. So we can talk about that if you're interested with your dedicated account manager. So thanks so much, Andie, for answering that.
Sure. So I think we are going to move on to purchase orders. And speaking of vendor bills, I'd like to show everyone just how that looks in QuickBooks. So let's head over to one of our projects here. So we have a proposal. Let's head into that. And we're going to generate a purchase order from this. So let's go into this proposal. And let's create our purchase order. I'm going to change the vendor here. So now what you'll notice over in QuickBooks, I'm selecting Z Gallery as my vendor. Let me just pop over to my vendor list in QuickBooks. You're going to see I do not have Z Gallery here. Even though I've added them in Ivy, they're not going to get generated in QuickBooks as a new vendor until I have a document. So we're going to go ahead and create this purchase order to Z Gallery. Let's click into it. Let's take a look. Let's just refresh over here and see what we've got. And there's Z Gallery. We're just going to pop in there. There's our purchase order. So let's talk about vendor bills and payments. So you have a couple of different options with purchase orders. and recording payment in Ivy. So coming down here, let's just say I'm ready to make my payment. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to go to record payment. And we're just going to say I'm paying with my credit card. And we'll say it's this American Express. You can put whatever reference number you want here. Now here's the big question. In your QB online account, create bill and bill payment, create bill only. What does that mean? The create bill and bill payment is essentially going to create a vendor invoice, a vendor bill in QuickBooks. The bill payment is exactly what it sounds like. It is a payment against that vendor bill, that accounts payable. So that bill payment will be written from my credit card because I'm choosing credit card. It's going to write it out of whatever credit card I map to in Ivy. And essentially, you're done, with the exception of calling Z Gallery, going to their website, and physically making your payment. Same thing would work for a check. It's going to create a bill payment or check out of whatever checking account you're mapped to. And then your last step is to just physically write the check or print it from QuickBooks. Now, what does bill only mean? That means you are going to record payment in Ivy, but it's not going to record payment in QuickBooks. It's going to just generate that vendor invoice, which will be open or unpaid in QuickBooks. That is ideal for folks that have a lot of orders going on. They want to pay multiple orders to that particular vendor. So maybe they just say bill only. They're recording payment in Ivy, of course. But then they want to come into QuickBooks and go to vendors, pay bills. This is a different vendor, but you can see here, I can now select 2 different bills to this vendor. You know, maybe this is for 2 separate orders for 2 separate projects, but I'm just writing them one check or paying one time with my credit card for these 2 orders. So that's kind of the difference between the two. I will say what I notice is a lot of designers are just coming in and recording bill and bill payment. Before I actually generate that bill payment, I want to show you one other thing. We have up here, mark as billed. Now, this is not going to record any type of payment in Ivy. This is ideal for designers who maybe are set up with net terms, net 30 terms with your vendors. You get an invoice or a bill from your vendor, but you're not required to pay them for 30 days because you have a great credit history with them and you have a 30-day net term. This will generate a vendor bill in QuickBooks. The 2 will be unpaid, both in Ivy and QuickBooks. And then what you would do when you're ready to make payment, same thing, you would come down here, you would record your payment. But because it's already been billed, your options will change to create bill payment in QuickBooks or do not create bill payment. And then you would follow the same steps. If you say to not create the bill payment, you would then go into QuickBooks and generate your check, for your multiple orders or do your weekly check run, however you like to do it. So to show you in QuickBooks, I'm going to come over here to record a payment. Again, I'm going to say credit card. We're going to do bill and bill payment so you can see what that looks like. Let's just refresh here. Now let's head over to QuickBooks. We're going to look at Z Gallery. Now those sneaky bill payments, they take about 30 seconds longer than typical transactions from Ivy, but you can see here I have my bill, I have my purchase order, and let's just give it a minute and refresh. And what we're going to see as soon as that refreshes is that you're going to see that bill payment from the credit card against this vendor bill. Now, if this is a good example to show you, if I had selected bill only, this is exactly what you would see. Then you would come up to your vendors, pay bills, and see this Z Gallery bill as an option to pay. Let's just refresh and see if that bill payment's over there.
Those pesky
and one
little
more
bill payments.
Yes,
30, real 30 seconds.
Yes,
this is live,
literal.
Yeah.
Literal. So there we go. So if you don't see the bill payment pop over right away, give it a minute, grab a cup of coffee, come back. You'll see it in there. So we can click into that. It says credit card because I chose the credit card as my payment account or my payment method. You can see in here, there's the bill selected. You're said and done. Again, with the exception of going online and making that payment to them or calling them with your credit card. If you need to edit this, oh, you know what? I'm not paying with a credit card, I'm paying with a check. We don't do anything in QuickBooks because the sync is one way. So we're gonna look at the details of the payment. We're gonna come over here to the right and we can edit it, we can delete it, we can do whatever we need to do, but we want to do that from Ivy, and Ivy will update QuickBooks accordingly. So, bills and bill payments.
So we actually have a couple of questions.
Great.
About bills and bill payments. So Tim is just wanting to clarify, because I know that you did mention this, but he's asking if you create bill only and later in QuickBooks combine payments, will it show in Ivy that the PO has been paid?
No, you will want to, so when you say bill only, you're recording payment. So if I were to select bill only, I'm still going through the make payment screen to do that. If you utilize the mark as billed won't be here since I paid this and it's been billed. But if you come up to utilize, under actions, mark as billed, it will not show paid in Ivy. It will generate an unpaid vendor bill in QuickBooks. And when you're ready to record payment, you want to record it from Ivy, and that's when it will give you that question of create bill payment or do not create bill payment. So I could even show that to you. Why don't we just pop back over to purchase orders?
It does look like your screen is lagging a little bit, by the way, so just a heads up.
Let's just quickly create PO here. So what you will see is when you utilize mark as billed, now again, I've not made any payment here on this purchase order. I'm going to mark as billed. You can see up here it shows billed. But again, I've not created any type of payment. So in this scenario, you wouldn't want to record payment. If payment hasn't been recorded in Ivy, you don't want to record payment directly in QuickBooks. You again want to generate that transaction from Ivy. So now when you make payment, your options now become in your QB Online account, create bill payment or don't create bill payment. So of course, if you say bill payment, it's going to write that, bill payment for you in QuickBooks, zero out that vendor bill. If you select don't create bill payment, you are recording payment in Ivy, you would still have to go into QuickBooks and generate your payment, which again is ideal if you're paying multiple vendor bills to the same vendor, or maybe your bookkeeper does a weekly check run and they just want to print all their laser checks out of QuickBooks. Totally up to you how you want to handle it.
Perfect. Ready for another question?
Sure.
So we have two questions here that basically relate to paying a deposit on the PO and then later paying the balance. How should they handle that? So two similar questions about that. What happens?
Okay, so you are going to pay 50% of this order. What will happen when you generate payment? Again, you're paying 50%. Ivy will generate a vendor bill for the full amount. So if we were just going to pay $300 of this $675, Ivy will generate a $675 vendor bill. It will record payment, of course, in Ivy for $300, showing a $375 balance in Ivy. Should you tell it, Ivy, to create the bill payment, it creates a bill payment for $300. You'll see a vendor bill with an open balance of $375. So the vendor bill will be created in full and then show as open. And then when you come back to Ivy to record the balance payment, you'll again get that option of create bill payment, do not create bill payment, and then you can choose accordingly.
Amazing. What if you have more than one checking or credit card you use to pay bills? We only support one checking or credit card, correct?
Yes, from the mapping page, currently we map to one checking account and one credit card as your bill pay account, which is right here. Bill pay account, you can see Chase checking is my bank account, Chase Visa credit card is my credit card. So if you have multiple cards that you use, until we develop, we would like to develop a drop-down box where you can select multiple credit cards or multiple bank accounts from the purchase order. Until we have that available, what you would want to do, I suggest, my suggestion is either utilize your Ivy Payable default account that we give you, or select, maybe like a generic credit card or bank account. And then in QuickBooks, you can move those items to the correct payment account. Again, I know this typically happens with credit cards. You may have 3 or 4 people on staff. They have different different cards with separate statements. So what you could do is in the reference number of the purchase order, let's go back to that PO. In the reference number, when you record the payment, you could list the last 4 digits. Let's see. You come here, you're going to record a payment, credit card. We'll say it's Susan's Amex 5354. That reference number will sync to QuickBooks. And then in QuickBooks, what you can do is that bill payment, when you see it, oh, this was actually for the other card, from the payment account, which is up here within the bill payment, you can select a different account. So you would see here your other bank accounts, your other credit card accounts, and then you would just simply move it.
Amazing. Are you ready for perhaps one more question?
Sure.
We have 2 different questions here related to transaction fees.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about how transaction fees map to QuickBooks?
Yes. So transaction fees, there's 2 different scenarios with transaction fees. The first scenario I'll talk about are transaction fees that you pass on to your client. You are charging, when you send the invoice out, you checkmark that box to have the client pay the transaction fee. Essentially in QuickBooks, there's one thing that happens, but the fees, you're not affected by the fees. It's not taken out or anything like that from your bank account or your payment from the customer. What we do, and this is for record keeping purposes, we create what is called a sales receipt. It's basically a recording of a sale without using an invoice. And we create, we'll say the fee was $5. You would have a $5 to your transaction fee income account, and then a negative $5 to your transaction fee expense account. Why do we create that $0 sales receipt? That is for record keeping purposes. So QuickBooks has record of that fee that you passed on to the client. But again, it's a $0 transaction, so it will not affect your income or your financial reporting. Over here in your account mapping, let's go to transaction fees. This is typically, and I usually tell folks to just leave these as the Ivy defaults. But those sales receipts are going to hit these two income and expense accounts. Again, $0 sales receipt, $0 transaction, record keeping purposes only. What happens when you pay the fee? What happens when your client pays? We'll say it's a $100 invoice. They go online, they pay with a credit card, $100 comes out off of their credit card. In your bank account, you get $97. Our credit card processor takes the fee from the transaction and gives you the rest. So what you would want to do, this is when I highly recommend utilizing undeposited funds as your deposit account. Undeposited funds is a holding account. It is only meant as a holding account where it gives you the opportunity to lump sum payments together versus having those payments dumped directly into your checking account. You would come into QuickBooks, go to your bank deposit. I don't have any payments in here because I've deposited everything, which is great. But what you would see from Ivy is that payment. Let's see, we're going to go with Kevin, San Diego Beach House. You would see whatever the payment is up here that pushed over from Ivy. And within the memo field, there is a description, Ivy online credit card payment, 3% fee, $3 taken out. We always push online payments over, indicating if the customer paid or if you paid the amount of the fee. You would then add that, and there's a great Help Center video on this. It's about 1.5 minutes, and it shows exactly how to handle this. You would code this to credit card transaction fee or bank fees, and you would record a -$3. Your deposit to your bank account, using my checking account here as the deposit account, would then properly reflect the amount you received and match what hits your bank account. You're welcome, especially those of you who have bookkeepers or accountants that work on your account, you're more than welcome to defer to them, let them know how we handle transaction fees, and if they want to record it separately in your QuickBooks account, that's fine as well. But those fees do, when you are absorbing the fee, those fees do need to be accounted for in QuickBooks.
Fantastic. Perfect. So we do have some other questions, but I'm not going to go over them right now. I'm going to let us kind of transition into the last part of this webinar. Just to reiterate for everybody, Andie, you're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much for doing this. We're so excited. You guys will all receive a recording of this, so if you do want to rewatch this, send it to your bookkeeper, send it to your CPA who is assisting with the sync. You're welcome to. Also, what I want to bring to your attention is Andie's support is available for $29 a month. It is the best $29 you would ever spend. If you go to my account and account information, you'll see down here if your membership includes it or not. If it does not, you can simply click add and subscribe. That gives you access to Andie to email and also set up calls if you do need to. So highly recommend it, even just to go over a few questions that you have. With that, we'll go to the last part of this webinar. So thank you so much.
So common sync errors. This is just some common errors that I see with the integration, how to fix them, what not to do. So as I've said, as Sivana said, big rule of thumb is we don't want to delete, edit, alter, add things in QuickBooks because the sync is one way. So one of the big ones I see are deleted customers. In QuickBooks, certain things, documents will get deleted, but customers, items, things like that, nothing is ever lost forever. They're made inactive. So when something's deleted, it's truly, as far as a customer, a vendor, or a product or service, it's made inactive. So as many of you probably know, projects sync to QuickBooks as clients. That's the default setting. Oftentimes folks are unaware of that, so they see Karen's Colorado cabin show up, once a document's created and saved. They see this show up as a client and say, that's not the client, that's the project. They go into QuickBooks and they make it inactive. So we're going to look at one of the projects that I made inactive. And let's go into a document. Okay, so there's that dreaded QB button. When you click on the QB button, it will typically, for kind of our more simple errors, will tell you what's going on. You can, if you know you went into QuickBooks and made Kevin's Malibu Mansion inactive, you have a couple different options. You would come here to your project, edit your project. So what are your options? You can reactivate Kevin's Malibu Mansion in QuickBooks. That's as simple as going to your customer center, clicking the gear, include inactive. You reactivate it. Things should map once you refresh over on the Ivy side. Your other option is, well, I created Kevin Hart as a client in QuickBooks. I want everything, all of his projects, to go to his customer profile. He's the customer. When you come into Ivy, you edit that project, you scroll down, click on additional settings. There it is, customer deleted. Again, it's been made inactive. You can now map to Kevin Hart. So all of these documents, transactions for this project are going to feed to Kevin Hart. Again, Kevin Hart needs to be created in QuickBooks if you are going to do this method. And then you could manually push over this invoice. What's next? Deleted invoice. So let's look at another project here. This, again, if you invoiced a proposal you weren't ready to, you can delete it from the Ivy side. If it gets deleted in QuickBooks, you're going to see this. Invoice deleted. This is one of those errors that it tells you right there what happened. If you didn't mean to delete it, maybe your admin person accidentally deleted it in QuickBooks, we give you the option to recreate in QuickBooks. We click that, the invoice will get regenerated, and then that button goes green, and that's what we want to see.
We love the green button. Somebody was asking, why are you calling it dreaded? And it said the red is the dread.
Yes, exactly.
So we want to help you identify what do these mean, and why you might see them is making sure that everything originates in Ivy.
Yes, exactly. So another one that we see, this is going to be the deleted payment issue. Let's go to Karen's project and her invoice. There it is, the red button. Let's click on it. Let's see what happened. Payment sync failed. Now in this situation, this is where either the account manager or typically myself have to step in and resync that payment for you. If it was accidentally deleted out of QuickBooks, this would typically require a call or an email to me, and then I'll get it taken care of for you. So again, you don't want to delete that payment out of QuickBooks. You want to edit it, delete it, whatever you need to do from Ivy by just coming down to see details, and then hover over here to edit, delete, whatever you need to do. So most of the errors that we see are taking place because things are done in QuickBooks. I highly, highly recommend, if you have a bookkeeper that you work with and you have my QuickBooks support, get them on a call with me. I know so many designers don't want to deal with these headaches. put that bookkeeper in touch with me, give them my calendar, give them my email. I am more than happy to sit down and talk with them, go over the integration. I also recommend, if you have a dedicated bookkeeper or administrative person who is handling the QuickBooks side of things, have them just understand the functionality of Ivy, have them speak with the account manager so they understand how to do things in Ivy, and then your integration will be much less painless and much more streamlined.
We just have a couple more questions.
Great.
Okay, so one is just on the topic of sync errors. One sync error that Karen is sharing that she wants to just understand what that means is she gets the red on locating invoice or searching for related customer. It says never synced. Does that sound familiar?
Yes. So sometimes that will happen. That will typically require myself or the account manager going in, taking a look at what happened. Sometimes it could be if something didn't sync from the proposal. Perhaps it's a new customer, something didn't sync, or the proposal didn't sync, so customer didn't get created. That's that searching for related customer. So I would just check QuickBooks to see if you had another document like a proposal. Check and see if that proposal synced over and that new customer was created in QuickBooks. That's kind of more of a case-by-case basis. The account managers can, and this is if you don't have support, QuickBooks support. The account managers can go and take a look and see what's going on. If you have QuickBooks support, definitely shoot me an email. I'll take a look and identify what that exact issue is.
Perfect. So interesting to note that if the proposal didn't sync that, and then you converted it to an invoice, there's a chance that that invoice won't sync. Go back to the proposal, retry the sync, and then retry the invoice sync.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Okay. And then we do have some other questions, but they are a little bit more specific. I really want to just appeal to the mass audience that we have here. So if you do have questions that didn't get answered and you have access to Andie's support, or if you don't, sign up. You can email Andie for these specific questions. Simply, we really would just want to make sure that this advanced webinar is really related to the topics that most people need to hear. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. We are so appreciative of the fact that you all shared your Friday with us and spent it talking about accounting. This is not an easy thing to cover. So thank you for powering through it with us. Thanks also for just, being supporters of Ivy, and we hope that you have a chance to speak with Andie. If you couldn't tell, she has the most relaxing voice and makes accounting, a relaxing thing. So with that, next Friday, I'm hosting, this is me, Sivan, I'm hosting a Love and Taxes in honor of Valentine's Day webinar, which will allow us to talk about how Ivy specifically, not related to QuickBooks, how Ivy manages taxes and everything you need to know about that. So we hope you'll join us and tune in. And if you want, you'll receive a recording of this afterwards. And without further ado, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a great one. Take care.